Yes, well, that was damp yesterday, wasn't it? Not necessarily a great day to go marching, but nevertheless, a lot of stout-hearted fellows in the British capital did exactly that, and there was more than usual meltdown by right-wing press and commentators about it. I mean, I'll just give you a few choice exhibits here. I mean, it really is off the scale, and one senses that these are a group of people that are terrified that they're going to lose control of the media narrative, and therefore are engaging in a lot of mask-off moments. I mean, Exhibit A is a man who desperately should have perhaps finished his education, because he seems to think that because a Saudi leader condemns Hamas, I mean, they can because they've exported their own terrorists abroad for years, so they can safely do that. Yes, because Saudi has done it, the BBC should as well. Which isn't really their job. Anyway, I thought it'd be interesting to see if Darren Grimes has condemned Hamas, and it turns out that he hasn't. We should be asking some serious questions of him. Anyway, yes, he's very unhappy about people holding placards, and especially when they talk about Muslim armies. Yes, why are calls for Muslim armies to wipe out Israel taking place on the streets of Britain's capital city? Well, the actual sort of banners aren't calling for that. You've just projected that onto it, and I don't know, people are allowed to have opinions. You know, in a crowd of 100,000 you are bound to find, and they have managed to find them, thank God, a handful of people that are perhaps going to be more extreme than others. Yes, and talking of utter ridiculousness and extremists, we end up with Connor Tomlin, another man who hasn't condemned Hamas. I think we should be asking him some serious questions like, how come you're such a blinding idiot, and do you think that this is impressing your 14-year-old Nazi American base? Because he comes out with this lot. This is a Moat and Bailey tactic for the ethno-religious colonialism. Oh, I wonder what he means by that. Yes, he does. Yes, it's those 14-year-old Americans once again wagging the tail. And, no, that's the wrong metaphor, but you only understand what I mean by that. Anyway, yes, apparently if you criticise anyone, you're a racist. But luckily for Connor, he doesn't have to criticise anyone. He simply is, isn't he? We have Toby Young, another man who hasn't condemned Hamas. The police have become the paramilitary wing of The Guardian. And the longer I think about that, the more surreal it just becomes. I mean, imagine if you let your subscription lapse. Would the boys in blue come round and have a bit of a word about it? It's utterly farcical, isn't it? Anyway, he is a man that believes staunchly in free speech, obviously, just not about anything that he doesn't want you to believe in. Patrick Christys, yes, a man who hasn't condemned Hamas, manages to do that classic right-wing thing of conflagrating the notion of British patriotism with a completely different thing. So, talking about the rugby players, yes, they really don't have necks. Anyway, talking about the rugby players singing the national anthem, how I'd love this to have been belted out at those demonstrators in London today. Yes, you see, good white guys singing the national anthem, as opposed to those others, yeah, that aren't there, because of course we all know that supporting Israel is the most productively British thing you could possibly do, isn't it? It's the most British thing you could do. We come on to that in just a second, the whole notion of what it is to be British. And Peter Whittle, again, a man who is melting because people don't agree with him. We must face facts. They're no longer our police. They will not protect us. No, they won't. They will laugh at you, Peter, a bit like I do. Oh, dreadful. Turning Point, of course, do the usual kind of thing about stirring up racial hatred. Not that they're racist, you understand. They just stir it up, that's all. They just take what's there and give it a bit of a whiz, yeah. And finally, I'm intrigued by the notion of this whole thing about British patriotism in this entire story, which is about a place overseas of which we know little, just to bring in a little historical context or not there. But this notion in the British press of the British Israeli, right? You know, we must support Israel. Why? It's the British thing to do. Why? Britishness. Right, okay. The Daily Mail had an interview with an Israeli paratrooper who's described as a British Israeli paratrooper. Yeah, interview with a guy speaking in very broken English, because I don't think, realistically, he's been in Britain for well over a decade. But magically, nothing in the article which says about how he's a British Israeli one. I imagine he's got dual citizenship, but he's an Israeli paratrooper, right? Yeah? In terms of people with mixed loyalties, I think you'd have to point a huge finger at that particular group of people, wouldn't you? Yeah? Yeah? And he's armed, and he's willing to fight, and he's dangerous. So if we're going to talk about dangerous people on the inside, I think your average Israeli British paratrooper might be somebody we need to worry about. And you know, the Daily Telegraph is at it as well. There is no talk about how come it is that these people are in Israel. Why are they there? They're economic migrants. They've simply up sticks and gone to another bleeding country to exploit them. Oh no, hang on, that's someone else, isn't it? Yes. People with divided loyalties that we must support. Must support. As opposed to British citizens that are engaged in peaceful demonstrations. Yes. 10 arrests out of 100,000 people. You do the maths. But of course the police aren't doing their job properly. They need to be beaten off the streets with sticks, because that would be something freedom, wouldn't it? Anyway, do have a lovely Sunday. Stay dry. I'm going to try and utilise a bit of that air out there, if it's not ripping it down, to get some washing done. Do have a nice day.